Okay, today's deck is about defensive basics and the shapes that we're working to achieve when we're playing defense during phase play. The formations and responsibilities for individuals and the team during defensive play, phase play, to be exact. So the outcomes that we want today, understanding our two shapes, our traditional setup and our 7-up, and line spacing in them, responsibilities of supporting each other in the line, and closing the gate at the edge. So the first shape is the traditional shape, which is 6 up and 1 back. You can see the player back here is what we will call the sweeper, the 6 defenders up front. This shape is easily achieved from the kickoff. Usually when the kick happens, the kicker will stay into that sweep position and cover back. Using a football analogy, think of it as a free safety who roams and looks to shut down and help everything out defensively. Easily achievable shape. Don't forget, though, that the 6 up actually have 2 extra defenders with the sidelines on either field. That's why we always work to achieve that inside-out shade. That way we can force the attacker towards the sideline and hopefully either push them out of bounds or force them to slow down and try to cut back in, which makes the tackle easier and also it's an easier chance to create a turnover by taking them out of the bounds. So the spacing inside of our defensive line, the spacing really doesn't change whether we're in the 6 or the 6 and 1 or the 7 up. What we're always trying to do is in the line spacing, players should be spaced out about 10 to 12 meters. Field is roughly 70 meters wide. If there's six of you up front and you go about 12 meters, that gives you plenty of area to cover, easily cover is a better way to put it. The sweeper should be back 15 to 20 meters from the front line. Okay, that sweeper isn't necessarily looking for the kicks, but that sweeper is patrolling the line to make sure that they're covering any line breaks in the case that one of the defenders is unable to recover the tackle. Yeah, so the spacing's pretty easy. Again, even if we move that sweeper up into here to the 7-up formation, if we still had 10 meters of spacing in between each player, we are easily achieved covering the entire field. About that spacing, we'll talk a little bit more about the responsibilities in a later slide. So just kind of giving you a support map of what it looks like in the traditional sense. You'll see that, all three, again, you see that common theme in sevens, that the 3 support players are always working together. Those are the people that you should be focused on talking to, the people on either side of you or the person behind you. And same thing with the sweep. The sweep should be talking to all those players in front. You can see everybody's covered by everybody in a beautiful, beautiful support map. So let's talk about the 7-up shape. 7-up shape has become a more popular formation. You're seeing it more and more at the international stage, which means that it'll eventually trickle down to our level. We're kind of trying to stay ahead of the curve a little bit by playing it here. What you can use it inside the defending 22. You can also use it if you feel really confident about your defense. You can play it the whole time. What it's really dependent on is making sure that you're having an aggressive launch to close down space so you don't give players time to kick. Where that is the weakness is once they kick, you got to have somebody that has some wheels to cover that space. This will give us a numbers advantage. Right off the bat, if you think about it, they're going to have to commit at least 3 people to the breakdown. If we commit only 1 or 2, we still have the numbers advantage out wide. Where this tends to confuse players is they'll look to be marking up. But if you go to mark up with the number advantage, that means at any one time, 2 players are going to be covering the same attacker, which is fine. We just need to communicate that. And that's why communication is so important, is that we understand who is covering what. Where we've seen this fail most often is when players fail to communicate who has that attacker, and that attacker just squirts through, scores a try, and you look at both players looking at each other trying to figure out whose assignment it was. Should never happen if we just talk about who is defending who. Again, the great thing about that numerical advantage is if both defenders are able to tackle that one attacker, we have a poaching opportunity there as long as they communicate about it. So to review the 7-up shape, we use it inside of our 22. We can use it all the time. It will be a tactical decision, and we always will have the numbers advantage, which means at any one time, 2 defenders will be covering 1 of the same attacker, and we just need to communicate it. Good. Understanding defensive support. This is something that we've talked about before, but I think it needs to be unpacked a little bit more, especially when we're not in stimulative training. So please, if you need to, rewind this part, listen to it over again. If you have any questions, always let us know. We'd be happy to walk through it even more with you. Remember, we're always working to get mark on the outside attacker with our outside defender. So what I mean is we're always having the push come from the inside here. So that attacker has the ball, that player is waiting for that player to make the pass there before he or she is saying push to allow this defender to move on to it, okay? Again, what we want is a mark from the outside. So this defender is marked against this attacker. Yes, I know that they're not lined up or directly over top of each other, but that's the point of this, because we're always trying to get that inside out shade. Oops, sorry. We are trying to get that inside out shade and make sure that we're covering that inside shoulder of the attacker. So that's why that diagram looks like that. Once this is achieved here, this defender here needs to call mark, and it needs to be echoed by every defender past him or her. That is communication. So we need to be mindful that defenders are responsible for everything from their front hip pocket to the defender outside of them's back pocket on their butt. So back pocket to front hip pocket. If an attacker comes into here, it's this player's job to make that tackle, not this player's job. This player is responsible for that gap. This player is responsible for that gap. So remember, in any situation, you are always going to be responsible for your teammate's back pocket to your frontmost hip pocket, okay? So that's an easy way to remember it, and that's how you can also make sure that you're achieving a really good mark, is being like, oh, okay, I know that I don't need to mark this player if I'm that player because I am responsible for this player because that's their gap. Again, remember, sevens is all about playing the man, so don't move off your defender. We talked about this before. A lot of teams have this habit to dump out and try to cover this player's line. That's not your job. That job to make the tackle is of this defender. What these two defenders always need to be working to do is what is on the next slide: closing the gate or shutting the gate. So as we achieve that mark, we really want to attack these support players and the ball carrier, okay? That by doing that, we come down and we attack that hip pocket of that player right here and here as well too. So again, what we don't want to do is have defenders dump out and try to cover this line. We want to actually have these defenders come down and get in these guys, in these players' way. Couple reasons why we want to do that is, one, it cuts off the support channels. So what it means is if this defender makes a weak tackle and they're able to get that ball free beyond the point of contact, we're not allowing offloads because we're staying with this attacker. We're also becoming a pylon and something that they have to work around to get to the breakdown. So by us getting into that pocket and shutting the gate, those attackers now need to work around us to get to there. This gives us time to get this defender back on their feet and possibly contest that ball. So again, do not dump out to cover your teammate's line. You come down and you shut your gate. It's not your responsibility to make this tackle as this player. It's that player's responsibility to make that tackle, okay? That is shutting the gate. Always attack down. That's what we call playing defense downhill. We always want to play down into the attack's face, not just stay in a flat line. So to review, traditional is used to protect against the kick and give us the defender to cover the back. Often it's best when you have a slower team. You just give that extra defender in that second layer that makes them figure out how to beat that player. 7-up is meant to be aggressive and is dependent on the launch. I love this defense. I think we're going to use it a lot this year. So yeah, we'll just put them up there in that line, get off our marks, try to shut people down. It's all about the launch though. So you have to commit to getting off that line fast and trying to shut that ball down somewhere in the middle. Defenders are responsible for everything from the outside defender's back pocket to their nearest front pocket. Again, easy to remember what your responsibility is. That is your gap. Anything goes through your gap, it's your responsibility to stop it. And if you don't stop it, it's your fault. 2-step launch to apply pressure while TCTing and talking. We always want to launch hard before we do anything. So always get those 2 steps up as you're launching, looking, are we marked and overloaded? And then playing what you see. Last three need to close the gate at the edge. That's that last slide that we just talked about. Let's make sure we're cutting it down, playing good defensive downhill, getting into the support channels, getting onto attackers and trying to slow them down to get to the breakdown. Otherwise, that's our defensive shapes. And we've went over some of our defensive responsibilities. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you're using your notebooks to take some notes. If you have any questions, let us know, comment, whatever. Thank you so much. Good luck.